Most people think they can spot toxic individuals easily, the loud aggressors or overt manipulators. But Carl Jung cautioned that the most destructive influences are often subtle, even charming or kind, sometimes lurking within our own family or close friends. These are unconscious patterns of behavior that slip past your defenses and quietly infiltrate your psyche. Jung spent his life studying how the unconscious of others can invade our own, and he identified certain dangerous personality archetypes that operate invisibly. By understanding these patterns and using insights from Stoic philosophy, you can protect your inner world and guard your inner fortress as fiercely as a soldier guards a city gate. Below, we expose 6 toxic archetypes Jung warned about, explaining their behavior and offering Stoic wisdom to help you reclaim your peace and inner strength. 1. The unconscious projector, the guilt dumper. Some people never shout or openly attack you. Instead, they hand you their emotional baggage and make you carry it. You might feel fine one moment, then after a conversation with them, you're suddenly anxious, guilty, or drained for no clear reason. These individuals often present as victims or deeply vulnerable, so you lower your guard to listen and help. But as Jung described, they are engaging in psychological projection, unloading their own unwanted feelings, shame, anger, insecurity, onto someone else. In projection, a person's ego denies the negative parts of themselves and attributes them to others, a defense mechanism that breeds misunderstanding and causes interpersonal damage. It's essentially blame shifting or shame dumping onto a safe target, often the friend or partner who is kind and emotionally stable, in other words, you. Jung on projection. A man who is unconscious of himself sees everything that he is not conscious of in himself coming to meet him from outside as projections upon his neighbor. In other words, someone refusing to face their own inner wounds truly believes, "You are the reason I feel this way," as they cast their anger or pain onto you. Over time, this hot potato game of emotions leaves you holding their guilt, anger, or sadness. Stoic wisdom. You are responsible for your mind, not for other people's wounds. The Stoics teach that we cannot control others' accusations or feelings, only our own response. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." If every time you set a boundary or speak truth, this person makes you feel cruel or selfish, recognize what's happening. You are being emotionally manipulated by projection. Pause and ask, is this emotion actually mine? If not, if you didn't choose or cause the guilt or anger you're feeling, do not accept it. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that other people's views and troubles can be contagious. Don't sabotage yourself by unwittingly adopting negative, untrue opinions. In practice, that means refusing to internalize the blame. Signs. You're facing a projector. You often leave interactions feeling like the bad guy without knowing why. You feel guilt or shame even though you were trying to help. They say things like, "I wouldn't feel like this if you hadn't." How to protect yourself. Maintain strong boundaries on what feelings are yours versus theirs. When you detect that sudden heaviness or guilt, mentally drop the luggage. Remind yourself those feelings originated in them, not you. Offer empathy, but do not take on responsibility for fixing emotions you didn't cause. As the Stoics advise, keep your inner judgment clear. You know your intentions. If you did nothing wrong, do not let someone's projection convince you that you are at fault. This clarity, as the Stoics note, is the root of peace. 2. The Persona-Masker, all image, no authenticity. Have you met someone who seems perfectly put together, always polite, controlled, and never showing raw emotion? At first, their composure and confidence attract you, but soon you notice something off. Conversations stay superficial, their warmth feels rehearsed, and genuine emotional connection is absent. Jung called this false front the persona, the social mask we present to the world to appear acceptable. We all wear masks to some degree in society, but the danger, Jung warned, is when a person becomes identical with their persona, forgetting their true self. The result is a shallow, brittle, conformist personality which is all persona, with its excessive concern for what people think. In such people, any display of real feeling or imperfection threatens the perfect image they maintain. They avoid vulnerability or honesty because it clashes with the role they are stuck in. You end up with a relationship, not with a real person, but with a performance. Being close to a persona-masker can subtly erode your own authenticity. You may start editing yourself, softening your opinions, hiding your struggles, to match their controlled vibe. Since they never admit weakness, you feel you shouldn't either. Psychologically, this is contagious. We unconsciously mirror others. If they only show a polished persona, you might feel pressure to be perfect too, leading you to suppress your true feelings. Over time, this dynamic makes you lose touch with your real self, trading honesty for artificial harmony. Stoic and Socratic wisdom. Ancient thinkers valued authenticity over appearance. The greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be, said Socrates, urging that our outward persona match our true character. Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius reminded themselves not to be seduced by titles or public image. You are a soul, not a role. In Meditations, he wrote that one must not confuse the little mask and social role with one's true self. Maturity in Stoicism comes from knowing who you are and living by principles, not by pleasing observers. This wisdom tells us that a relationship devoid of real openness is not healthy. If you must walk on eggshells to avoid disrupting someone's perfect image, something is wrong. Signs of a persona-masker. They never discuss deeper feelings or past mistakes. They may dismiss or stiffen at others' emotional displays, e.g. they get uncomfortable if you cry or share a struggle. Conversations feel surface level, and any attempt at depth is deflected with a joke or a polite nod. You catch yourself acting polite and hiding parts of yourself around them to avoid rocking the boat. How to respond. Recognize that real trust requires vulnerability on both sides. Try gently introducing more authenticity. Share a genuine feeling and see if they engage. If they consistently avoid true connection, accept that this relationship may remain shallow. Do not diminish yourself to uphold someone else's perfect facade. Remind yourself of Aristotle's insight that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. You shouldn't have to pretend in your close relationships. If you feel like you're in a play you didn't audition for, step back. Seek friendships where your real self, flaws and all, is welcome. As the Stoics would say, better to be truthful and occasionally misunderstood than to live in comfortable falseness, which is a prison with soft cushions. 3. The Shadow-Denier, Repressed Volcano. This archetype appears as the epitome of calm and virtue. They are responsible, reasonable, and never seem angry or emotional, earning admiration as the mature one. But Jung would warn, when someone never shows anger, envy, or grief, it doesn't mean those feelings don't exist. It often means they are repressed in the unconscious, forming what Jung called the shadow. The shadow is all the parts of ourselves we've stuffed into the psychological basement because they didn't fit the image we wanted to project. Shadow deniers bury any emotions deemed unacceptable, rage, ambition, jealousy, etc., to uphold their image of the strong, good person. The problem is, what we repress doesn't disappear, it grows teeth. As one Jungian commentary puts it, the more we deny something in ourselves, the more powerful and potentially destructive it becomes when it finally breaks through. That's why the most explosive anger often comes from people who pride themselves on being nice all the time. The shadow always finds a way out, and it's rarely pretty when it does. So, living or working with a shadow denier is like sitting on a volcano that appears dormant. The pressure builds underground. Eventually, their suppressed feelings leak out in indirect ways: sarcasm, passive-aggressive remarks, contemptuous tones, or sudden inexplicable coldness. Jung noted that unacknowledged shadow content will direct one's life as if by fate. If not made conscious, it acts like an autonomous entity in the psyche. In everyday terms, that means the person doesn't intend to be cruel. Their suppressed anger or hurt seems to hijack them. You might notice them snapping over trivial matters or delivering a compliment that feels like a hidden stab. This quiet erosion of respect and warmth can make you feel insecure or guilty, even though you haven't done anything. It's destabilizing because you sense tension and resentment from them, but they insist everything is fine, never openly addressing the issue. Stoic wisdom. The Stoics emphasized self-mastery, not self-suppression. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Many people misinterpret this as an endorsement of emotional suppression, but true Stoic practice involves acknowledging emotions and using reason to guide responses, rather than pretending the emotions don't exist. As Seneca observed, suppressed rage can lead to cruelty, whereas understood and tempered emotion leads to self-control. Jung's view aligns. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will rule our lives. The Shadow-Denier skips the crucial step of honest self-examination. Stoicism would encourage them to face those darker feelings and use reason or therapy to work through them, rather than wearing a perpetual mask of composure. For those around a Shadow-Denier, Stoicism offers a clear principle. Focus on what you can control. You cannot diffuse someone else's inner bomb if they refuse to admit it's there. But you can control whether you stand in its blast radius. Signs of a repressed shadow in someone. They insist they never get angry or never gossip, virtue signaling. Yet you catch veiled jabs or eye rolls. They may show micro-expressions of irritation or judgment that they quickly cover up. They often speak in a condescendingly polite way that leaves you feeling slighted without obvious cause. No one ever hears them yell, but their silence punishes. How to protect yourself. Do not be lulled by surface calm. As the saying goes, don't mistake composure for peace. Pay attention to subtle red flags, the cutting joke, the tight smile, the occasional slip of disdain. If you sense that pattern, trust your gut. You might gently encourage honesty. I sense you're upset, want to talk about it, but a chronic shadow-denier may deny any issue. In that case, set boundaries. Refuse to tolerate covert disrespect. I'd like if we spoke to each other with mutual respect. If they cannot engage sincerely, create distance. Epictetus taught that freedom is won by disregarding things beyond our control, and you cannot control or fix someone's inner war for them. You can choose not to be a target. If their unspoken negativity is poisoning your well-being, step out of range. In short, don't wait for the volcano to erupt. Value your peace, and if needed, lovingly detach from the emotionally unhealthy dynamic. 4. The righteous moralizer. Virtue as a weapon. This type always seems to have the right advice. They position themselves as morally superior or just trying to help you improve. At first, their feedback sounds principled and caring. They claim to hold high standards and encourage you to live up to them. But over time, a pattern emerges. You always leave interactions feeling smaller, ashamed, or never good enough. The moralizer rarely raises their voice or openly insults. Instead, they wield judgment wrapped in concern. For example, they might say, "I'm only telling you this for your own good," or "A real friend tells you the hard truth." They may even preface criticism with a compliment, but the core message is that you are falling short in your lifestyle, choices, or character. What's actually happening, according to Jungian insight, is shadow projection under the guise of virtue. Jung noted that people who repress their own dark impulses, envy, lust, resentment, often project those traits onto others in the name of correcting them. In other words, someone who cannot admit their own flaws may become overzealous in spotting and fixing flaws in you. As Jung misattributed, the most dangerous psychological mistake is projecting our shadow onto others. It is the root of almost all conflicts. The moralizer's unconscious goal is to keep their own conscience clean by controlling yours. Philosopher Aristotle taught that true virtue lies in balance, the golden mean between extremes. But moralizers live at the extreme, rigid, uncompromising standards that leave no room for human complexity. Instead of introspection, they externalize morality into a rule book that everyone, especially you, must follow. If you deviate, they use guilt or disapproval to yank you back in line. Often, they genuinely believe they're helping. They see themselves as a guide or teacher. Yet the net effect is control, not growth. You begin second-guessing harmless decisions because you fear, what will they say? Your own inner voice is drowned out by their constant moral commentary. This erodes self-trust and breeds dependency on their approval. It's a subtle form of domination couched as mentorship. Stoic wisdom. The Stoics placed the focus of moral development on mastering oneself, not others. Epictetus advised, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That is, concentrate on your own virtue and ignore others' approval. A true sage does not need to preach or police another's behavior. They lead by example. Moreover, Stoicism and classical philosophy warn against the arrogance of assumed moral infallibility. The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing, said Socrates. A moralizer violates this by acting as if they know exactly how everyone else should live, blinding themselves to their own ignorance. Plato, and later Jungian thinkers, described the danger of those who love the appearance of virtue more than the substance, using piety as a tool of power. In truth, forcing one's morality on others is itself immoral, because it disrespects others' agency and unique path. Stoicism would encourage you to hold fast to your own moral compass and not let another's dogma chain you. Signs of a moralizer. You feel judged in their presence, even when you haven't actually done anything wrong. They have a principled explanation for why their way is the only right way. They often start sentences with, you should, or you need to. They frame their criticism as tough love or duty. Over time, you notice your confidence eroding. You defer to them on personal choices that shouldn't concern them, career, relationships, etc., seeking permission or fearing rebuke. How to take back your power, reassert your autonomy, remind yourself, even silently, that your life is your own. A helpful question. Do I feel more myself around this person, or less? If their guidance consistently makes you feel guilty, anxious, or not enough, recognize this is not true guidance. It's control. Set boundaries on unsolicited advice. You can say, I appreciate your concern, but I need to make this decision myself. Practice not over-explaining or defending yourself. You don't need their approval to live your values. Stoic teacher Marcus Aurelius purportedly noted that the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know the subject. The point is that popularity or pressure doesn't equal truth. Trust your reasoned judgment over their rhetoric. Surround yourself with people who offer support without strings and mentors who respect your individuality. And remember, as Socrates said, true wisdom makes one humble. Those who loudly claim the moral high ground might be overlooking the view of their own shadow. You do not have to shrink to appease someone else's rigid ideals. As the Stoics would say, live by your principles quietly and let the results speak for themselves. 5. The emotional tempest, triggered and unpredictable. Some relationships feel like a safe harbor, others feel like a small boat in a sudden storm. With the emotional tempest archetype, you never know when the weather will change. One day they're warm, loving, even overly dependent on you. The next day they're distant, irritable, or explosively upset, and you can't pinpoint why. These individuals often have deep emotional complexes, in Jung's terms, rooted in past trauma or unresolved fears. A complex is essentially a knot in the psyche, a cluster of memories and feelings that can seize control of one's reactions. Jung observed that complexes act like autonomous entities, little mini-personalities. that can be triggered by something innocent and then behave like an animated foreign body in the person's mind. In practical terms, when some old wound, abandonment, betrayal, etc., is unconsciously touched, the person flips. Suddenly, you're not dealing with the rational present-day friend or partner, but with a hurt child or angry victim from their past, and they may themselves be bewildered by the intensity of their reaction. Jung described it as being possessed by a complex. The person genuinely might not understand why they reacted so strongly, and later may even regret it. But in the moment, you become a convenient target or proxy for their internal battle. A small comment like, "I'll be home late," might trigger a disproportionate outburst because it activated their abandonment complex. They might accuse you of not caring, or suddenly break down in tears over something that to you seemed trivial. Living in this emotional whiplash, you naturally start walking on eggshells, doing everything in your power to keep them stable and avoid triggers. You play the caretaker, monitoring their moods constantly. Your own needs and feelings are suppressed. "I won't bring up that issue, it might set them off." Over time, you lose your spontaneity and voice, tiptoeing through the relationship as if defusing a bomb daily. This is emotionally exhausting and destabilizing. It erodes your sense of normalcy and can lead to anxiety or hypervigilance on your part. Stoic wisdom. The Stoics prioritized inner calm and equanimity, training themselves to insert a pause between stimulus and response. Marcus Aurelius advised himself, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you," meaning we can choose our reaction. However, someone ruled by emotional complexes lacks that freedom in the heat of the moment. They effectively have not yet mastered the Stoic skill of pausing before the storm. Stoicism also teaches knowing what is yours and what is not. As Socrates, via Plato, would say, much of wisdom is recognizing what you do not control. You do not control their inner triggers. Only they can do the work to heal those. Realizing this can be freeing. No matter how kind or careful you are, you cannot fix another's unresolved past. The Stoic stance would be to maintain compassion, but not responsibility for the other's emotional upheavals. Your primary duty is to your own soul, which includes preserving your sanity and integrity. It's not unkind to protect yourself from another's volatility. In fact, it often gives them the space to confront their issues. Signs you're caught in an emotional tempest. You frequently feel you're walking on eggshells. You monitor their mood shifts more than you check in with your own feelings. You blame yourself whenever they explode. "If I had just done X differently, this wouldn't have happened." In good moments, they can be wonderfully close and loving, which makes the bad moments more confusing. You hold on to the sunny times, hoping the storms are just anomalies. You may have anxiety anticipating the next episode. How to regain balance. First, acknowledge the pattern. Their emotional roller coaster is not your fault. Stop taking responsibility for preventing someone else's outbursts. That's beyond your control. Instead, set clear boundaries. For example, "I want to support you, but I won't be yelled at. Let's talk when you're calmer." When they rage or sulk unexpectedly, remind yourself this is likely about them, their past, their pain, and not about something you did. If you've been bending over backwards to keep peace, start asserting small needs of your own. "I need to step out for a bit to clear my head." Gauge their reaction. If they respect it once calm, there's hope for change. If they guilt-trip you for it, the toxic cycle is entrenched. Encourage them to seek help, therapy, counseling, for the underlying issues. But crucially, give yourself permission to step away if needed. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." If this person is not mastering their emotions, they are enslaved by them. And if you stay chained to them, you become a prisoner of those emotions too. You can love someone and still decide not to drown with them. Set limits for how much chaos you'll tolerate. Protect your own emotional health, because your life should not be a constant survival mode. Real love doesn't require martyrdom. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for them and yourself is to refuse to participate in the unhealthy pattern and instead model the calm, steady boundary that real inner strength provides. 6. The emotional vampire, codependent Enmesher. This final archetype doesn't appear dangerous at first. In fact, they often seem gentle, needy, or fragile. They aren't loud or demanding in the traditional sense. Instead, they hook you with subtlety, constant reliance and attachment disguised as friendship or love. At the start, you're just being a caring person, listening to their troubles at 1 a.m., helping with their endless crises, comforting them when they feel down, which is often. But there's always another crisis, always another request for your time and emotional energy. Gradually, you realize this has become one-sided. You are effectively their emotional life support, and your own energy is being drained. Jung didn't use the modern term energy vampire, but he described a similar phenomenon as a symbiotic relationship, a psychological state where contents of one person's unconscious are experienced in another person. In such enmeshment, one person becomes psychologically fused with another, unable to define their identity or mood without constant reflection from the other. In simpler terms, they need you to exist. Your empathy and stability feed them, but at the cost of your own vitality. It often isn't intentional manipulation, it's driven by unconscious fear and dependence. The emotional vampire is terrified, often subconsciously, of being alone or facing their issues, so they latch onto a kind soul, you, who will save them repeatedly. They might frame it as love or best friendship. I don't know what I'd do without you. But pay attention. Do they actually take your advice or make changes? Or do the same dramas repeat endlessly? Often, despite your support, they remain in perpetual crisis mode. That's because deep down, solving their problems would remove the attention and sympathy they crave. Over time, you'll notice your own life shrinking. You cancel plans or neglect your needs to attend to them. You feel guilty if you don't answer their calls or if you want a day of space. Your emotional landscape becomes crowded with their anxieties and dilemmas, leaving no room for your own feelings. This is the hallmark of an unhealthy codependent dynamic. Stoic wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Therefore, guard accordingly." In relationships, guarding your thoughts means maintaining mental autonomy, not letting someone else's constant negativity or need consume your mind. Stoicism teaches compassion, but also the importance of boundaries and self-responsibility. Epictetus told his students that each person must carry their own burden of choices and consequences. Nobody can do another's inner work for them. When one person refuses to take responsibility for their life and simply leans on yours, Stoicism would see this as a violation of natural order, each soul's duty to develop itself. You are not morally obliged to sacrifice your inner peace on the altar of someone else's endless problems. In fact, doing so can be a form of enabling, which ultimately doesn't help them grow. True Stoic kindness is guided by wisdom, not guilt. Signs of an emotional vampire. You feel exhausted after interacting with them, even if there was no active conflict. They might frequently use phrases like, "I just really need you," and small favors snowball into major impositions on your time. They often seem in urgent need, yet any solution you help with is temporary. A new crisis soon follows. Importantly, your needs in the relationship are not equally attended to. It revolves around their drama or sadness. If you pull back even slightly, they may act hurt or say you don't care about them. You carry a constant low-level guilt that you're not doing enough for them. How to rebalance and protect your energy. The first step is stark honesty with yourself. Am I helping this person grow or just enabling their dependence? If it's the latter, realize that endless rescuing is not true friendship or love. It's a distortion. Begin to re-establish boundaries. For example, limit the length of those venting phone calls, or encourage them to solve minor issues on their own. You can say, "I'm confident you can handle this. Let me know how it goes." Notice their reaction. A healthy person will try. An emotional vampire might panic or guilt trip. You're abandoning me. Stand firm. Start prioritizing your own routines and interests again. Do not drop everything for them each time. As Jung noted, a symbiotic pair must separate for individuation to occur. They need to find their identity apart from you, and you need to reclaim yours. If guilt strikes, remember the Stoic perspective. Kindness does not mean self-erosion. Real love creates space. It doesn't suffocate. By stepping back, you are actually giving them a chance to develop self-reliance, though they may not see it that way initially. In practice, you might help them find other support, professional or social, so you're not the sole lifeline. Finally, give yourself permission to say no without an elaborate excuse. I'm sorry, I can't talk tonight. I need to rest. You owe no apology for safeguarding your well-being. Socrates is reputed to have said that understanding what is not yours is the beginning of wisdom. Their life is not yours to live. You can care about someone without being responsible for them. If the person refuses to respect your boundaries and continues to drain you, it may be necessary to distance or end the relationship. It can be painful, but remember, you deserve relationships that feed you, not ones that feed on you. The Stoics would encourage a return to a life of balance, where your peace and clarity are not constantly disrupted. You are allowed to walk away from someone else's chaos, no matter how kind or helpless they appear. Your first duty is to your own soul's health. In conclusion, not all danger shouts and snarls. Some of it whispers and wears a friendly face. Carl Jung's legacy urges us to shine light on these hidden toxic archetypes, the subtle emotional saboteurs, so we can reclaim our minds. Stoic philosophy arms us with the strength to set boundaries and the clarity to discern what is ours and what is not. You do not have to carry burdens that aren't yours. As a final reminder from the Stoic school, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Guard your mind, protect your peace. By recognizing these 6 patterns, the projector, Persona-Masker, Shadow-Denier, Moralizer, emotional Tempest, and emotional vampire, you can stop the silent infiltration of your psyche. Instead, you'll stand at the gates of your inner city, a clear and firm guardian. In doing so, you create space for healthier, truly supportive relationships and unshakable inner strength. You can't always control who enters your life, but you can decide who stays. Stoicism doesn't ask you to shut the world out. It asks you to discern what belongs to you and what doesn't. Your mind, your peace, your soul. These are sacred, and they are worth protecting. If today's message gave you clarity, strength, or direction, then do one thing: subscribe to Be Stoic. Here, we don't just talk about philosophy, we live it. Each video is a step toward mental sharpness, inner resilience, and true freedom. Hit that subscribe button. Watch the next video on your screen. Share this journey with someone who needs it. Don't let the shadows of others dim your inner light. Live with clarity. Live with strength. Live stoically. Be stoic.